Hello, everyone. How's everyone going? How's everyone doing? Welcome to the Beehive. We are here to be in a conversation with our friend David Dysart around strategic guide to predictive modeling in Slate. And we talk about data and the importance of it, but it's really about us predicting what we should be interacting with, what the actions are. And so today, David's going to be giving us a little bit of strategy. In this type of session in the Beehive, we're diving a little bit more into the Slate product. Of course, you could use this with any other kind of product you have, but because David happens to be a Slate expert, we actually use it there. So David, the first thing I'm going to probably just throw out at you before you take the road and showcase what you need to do on inside of Slate and inside the predictive modeling. What is predictive modeling, even from a non-higher ed kind of perspective? What is predictive modeling first?
So really what we're just trying to do is we're trying to predict an outcome. And in higher education, that can be, will the student apply? Will the student actually matriculate? Will they be retained or graduate? Will they donate? And like you said, it's a broad field. It's not just in higher education. There's so many different use cases. Will they watch this movie? Will they buy this product? So we're focused on that, the lens and the framework of higher education, particularly in admissions for this particular workshop. I'm just trying to see what behaviors, what data points will actually lead to someone probably being applying or being enrolled, and how we can also nudge those behaviors and how we can be more strategic to get the outcomes that we want and the student success that they need.
Yeah, and I think everything is a little bit about nudging, right? Because we are always being nudged, even in our regular world. We look for something on Amazon and we put it in our shopping cart, or we don't even put it in our shopping cart, and they say, "Hey, do you want to leave off? You want to go to where you left off at, right?" Those are all a little bit nudges of how it is. And with higher ed, there's these set of moments that matter that I think sometimes kids just get lost, either when they're applying, when they're in the application process, they forget to do something, or even as they go through their life cycle as a student. There's a journey that a student goes through, and everyone's nudge might be a little bit different, right? So there's a little bit of customization that goes here. But I think the piece that I think is really interesting is data is much more accessible now, and more so than we've ever had before. So of course, we could look at static data from last year and do a prediction, but I think we can actually use data in much more of a live form to predict what a student is actually doing at the moment in a lot of cases, right? So I think one of those things is a really important element of it. When you think about it in a higher ed context, what do you see predictive modeling doing in terms of moving or even giving outcomes that campuses want? And maybe not even outcomes of the campus, the outcome of that student, that learner, right? Or even the outcome of that industry that needs someone with certain things that, hey, we can maybe nudge them into a major that might meet their needs, or they have a personality or a behavior for that, right? So what is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think you really hit the nail on the head there, where there's the two broad tracks that we can think about this. We can use predictive modeling on that broader macro scale to craft our incoming class, or understand where we're at with our projections and our goals, and are we going to put enough heads in beds or meet our tuition needs. But also understanding on that student side of what does the student need to be successful? What can we do in the nudge department, whether that's automated by Slate or if that's more human-centered programming or workshops that we can do with these groups of students that help them to be more successful. And there's two really broad, big topics, but there's so much nuance and work that can be done on either side of that wall.
Yeah. And so for the folks that are new to the Beehive, we're a very interactive group. So, The chat is being manned. The voice of the chat, we call it. It will be done by Gabrielle and potentially Ro. If you have a thought, a comment, if you notice that Daniel asked if we were going to record this, this is actually being live streamed right now into YouTube. So of course, it's live right now and it'll be available afterwards. So, and you can come back to it at any point in time, or if you want to share it with someone you feel it would benefit, it's available to you at any point. But we always say your voice matters. So that is one of the big things that we want. We want your interaction. So if you do put a comment in, we may actually showcase it on the stage, and we will let David maybe answer it. If you have questions, certainly could do that. If there is even conversation, Gabrielle may actually come on stage and maybe even drive a conversation around what's happening there. So your voice matters. You certainly could do it on the chat, or you can come on stage. So we may even invite you on, join the party. Your points, your perspective is as important as anyone else's. So definitely, join us as we go through that process. So those are the logistics of it. I want to welcome all the folks here. So David, let's go. I'll let you take it from here and then drive the conversation.
Great. Thank you so much, Matt. Really appreciate it. Okay, so if we can get... I think I'm sharing my screen. Is there a way to get that up? There we go. Thanks, Matt. So, hello, welcome everyone to this is actually our 4th workshop powered by Beyond Academics. These workshops are designed to be a deeper dive into the technical and the strategic pieces and how to build and implement things like engagement scoring, predictive modeling into Slate or your other CRM systems. So I've presented on this at places like Slate Summit and AACRO Sim, but we're trying to get more detailed and more hands-on with the actual pieces that are moving and hopefully give you a more in-depth experience to learn. My name is David. I am the Director of Data and Functional Systems Design here at Beyond Academics. I've worked at institutional research and admissions at a large public institution and small liberal arts, respectively. I've also spent a bit of time outside of higher education, but I am happy to have refound my home here in higher ed, and especially happy to be here with you today. Beyond Academics serves as an operating partner to institutions committed to becoming and remaining future ready. So for today, we're going to be working through 3 broad project areas here. The first will be planning and projections with predictive modeling, how to augment your recruitment and programming with it, and then also how to help direct and guide your marketing and communications with predictive modeling. A lot of the technical framework on how to run and automate this process is the same or very similar to our engagement score workshops the last few months. Next month, we'll cover kind of the nuts and bolts on how this is a little bit different to actually build your predictive model in Slate so that you have the raw behaviors, the nudged behaviors, and the actual probability that 0 to 100% of how likely your student is to apply, is to enroll, or whatever your outcome behavior is. But today I wanted to talk more about how to incorporate predictive modeling into your business processes. We'll continue with our admission case study, working with application and matriculation modeling, but this could be used for other higher education spaces like retention and donation, or even outside of higher ed in general. These workshops run for about an hour. We can pause for questions from the chat, or if you want to hop on stage and we can have a nice little mini conversation about anything that you find interesting, please just join us in the chat and we'll get that going. Planning, and I alluded to this a little bit earlier with the conversation with Matt, is we have 2 broad tracks when it comes to planning and understanding our student records. That's that broader macro level of crafting your class, understanding where you are with relation to your goals. But there's also that more tailored level of understanding your individual students and crafting personas and how you can engage with them. So broadly, we can estimate how many students are going to apply and matriculate in our current funnel. So we'll just hop over to Slate. So we're going to go over a few different Slate reports, as well as some Excel work that we can do. I've built basically the same products, both in Excel and Slate, It's a little bit easier and faster for me to tinker with something in Excel, but I want to make sure that to also show how it's done in Slate for folks who just want one central place for the data to live. So in this funnel, this is meant to be more of a, as the year progresses through the cycle. I have end of year data just because this is a test database, which makes the report a little less intuitive, but we're starting to see in our funnel how many students or academic records we have that we're projecting to apply, how many of those applicants or admits are projected to enroll. And again, do we have enough heads and beds? Do we have enough faculty in our different programs to teach classes? Do we need to hire additional reviewers to read applications for the process? So this is very much so that first level of adaptation of your predictive modeling. It becomes even more powerful as you add additional data to Slate. So down here, we also have some additional information such as net tuition revenue, how much aid is expected to go to your admitted class, and discount rates. So as you get more layers of data, this becomes much more impactful for how your institution develops a strategy and is meeting their goals and expectations. We're also just breaking this out by major for, again, that expected net tuition revenue, so we can start to develop plans moving forward on how do we need to augment recruitment to maybe get different students from different programs interested in the institution. And we can also start looking at, pop up. Nope. Okay, yeah. I think I did not open up one of my reports. Sorry about that. Let me just...
At least they know it's not canned webinar, David.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry about that, folks. Okay, here we go. So we can also start looking at this in more ways on understanding how nudges may be playing a part, or how expected student behaviors change throughout the cycle. So if you have, say, 2 months before your commit deadline, we can start seeing like, okay, we anticipate students will attend our admitted student day, or we expect them to be more engaged on the website over the course of the month. So you can not only look at your current projections, but also based on anticipated behaviors, how many students we are expecting to come into either our individual majors or an entire incoming class. And again, if you have the financial aid data in there, how that affects your net tuition revenue. And also on a student level. This is a little bit easier to program into Slate, the nudges. So we can see we have the student 42% likelihood to enroll, either with the nudges or that expected behavior over the next course of the month. We probably expect it to be more like a 45% chance. But if we do take another strategic action of an email campaign or setting up additional academic programming for them, maybe we can get them up to a 49%. And we can see how that affects our total incoming class. So one of the really great things about predictive modeling, especially when you have the raw data in the raw model in Slate itself, is you're able to start being more strategic with how you are interacting with your students and engaging with them. So we can also pop this over to Excel. Like I said, I find it a little bit easier sometimes to work with the data in Excel. We're doing something very similar. We have our student data. We have our predictive modeling scores. We're crafting our class with admitting the students or not. Then we have our costs associated with attending the institution, how much aid is being offered by the institution, net tuition revenue, discount rate, weighting those elements based on how likely they are to enroll. And same thing, we can start looking at what does the financial viability of this incoming class on the impacts on the institution, the different majors. So we just have a lot of flexibility in whatever system that you are putting this data into to get a lot of insight that can help you start crafting your class. But then there's other additional considerations. What kind of marketing, recruitment, and travel do we need to do, if not for this cycle, for next cycle? And we're also able to start understanding at even the person level, how do these students look different in the different predictive models? One of the things that I like to do is I establish multiple predictive models for a single student. So if they're an international student, they get their own variables and their own weights for each of those behaviors and data points. If they're a financial aid yes student, they get their own model. And then we aggregate those models across the students. So we can see the student here. We expect, based on their international predictive model of if they would enroll or not, an 80% likelihood to enroll. But as a financial aid student, we expect it to be 30%. So we're getting these contrasting results from our models. And this allows us to start investigating how our different personas are navigating our models. So maybe the academics, like their academic rating is a 4 out of 5, and that's both times as that goes up, we expect them more likely to enroll. Same thing, if an international student needs more aid, we're expecting that to be more likely.
Hey, David.
Generally, yes.
Coming in from the voice of the chat, we have a couple of questions from Melissa. Yeah. So the first one is, where does the projected from enrollment come? I'm guessing that's just where does the projected enrollment come from? And then, so you build the model and then transfer into Slate. So it looks like there's some questioning about how you actually get that model in there.
Yes. So what I like to do is I will take historical data and I will put it into a program like SPSS, or if you're more familiar with like a program like R or some kind of statistical program, you can build your predictive model based on your historical records. And then you can actually program that model into Slate. So let's just take a look at, go over this a little bit more in a little bit. So for binary logistic regression, what you get is kind of a constant of like, how likely is an average student to matriculate? And then based on their different behaviors, in this case, we have 4 different behaviors. They're a 100-point scale, a 2-point scale, a 5-point scale, and a 1-point scale. Based on those behaviors and our actual predictive model that we built outside of Slate, but we can program that into Slate. So Slate's actually running this model on your student records to give you that, again, that 0 to 100% likelihood to take that action. In this case, it's to matriculate or to enroll, commit, whatever your term is for your institution. So yeah, we are technically building the model outside of Slate, but we are having Slate run the model once we get the results. And that's something that we can do when we were doing cycle prep. We can look at, we can add a new year of data, update our model. Chances are you're probably not going to get a hugely different set of behaviors, but you are going to get different values per behavior for sure, as different factors come into play. Lots of not so fun things coming up, like we're already in the midst of the FAFSA simplification, the demographic cliff, lots of hurdles that we're all facing that are going to be changing how decisions are being made by your students. So it is very important to make your updates at least every year based on this, and maybe your institution's offering a new type of way to interact with your institution.
So David, just so that I make sure I understand, what you're saying is that doing the analysis is probably going to be needed to be done in an outside, solution, Excel, wherever you're doing it, right? And then you then use the data from that to then use Slate to interact and engage in the right way. Is that what you're really trying to do here?
Correct. Yeah.
And so is there a strategy that you should use a particular, third-party product, or is something work better in Slate? And remember, there's always people that aren't in Slate. I would love to understand, you use something you're comfortable with. So the reality is, use what you're comfortable with. Is that a good statement in terms of how to get data the way that you want to get it done?
Yeah, I think definitely with whatever program or whatever statistical model fits the ability of your staff or the comfort level of your staff. There are some confines with Slate. So we're essentially using basically SQL to replicate the math of our statistical model. which is very easy to do for something like binary logistic regression. But if you're running some like black box machine learning algorithm that you don't know what is actually leading to it saying this person's likely to enroll or not, you're not going to be able to program that into Slate necessarily. That would be like, okay, we're going to feed data out, and then whatever system we're feeding it out into is going to give us a value back. And
so is any of the SISs able to do any of this kind of stuff, or have we just come to the point where we say the system of an SIS is really a system of record, but we probably need this analytics, algorithm, creation to be a part of that? Is that how you're seeing this would work?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with any SIS that could actually build the model.
Yeah.
One of the great things about a CRM is it has such dynamic communication and reporting abilities. So I think something like Slate can do so much on the back end with the modeling details directly in Slate. Or if you have another system that, again, can run those kind of mathematical formulas in something like SQL, you can do those similar, a lot of the same projects that we're going to work on today are possible across other systems, as long as you're able to, really all you're doing is you're taking what their live data is, multiplying it by a certain number, and then up here, what they're going to give you is basically like an odds ratio, and then, or logic. Then we're going to take that, and this is the formula to just make it into like a 0 to 100% likelihood of that behavior. So that the accuracy of that final number is going to be determined by how large your historical data is, how many changes there are happening from year to year. So like you can't necessarily say, like, okay, yes, this person's 95% likelihood to enroll. That's 100% accurate, because it is just going to, again, have the limitations on how accurate is your model, how clean is your historical data. If you have new ways they're engaging with your institution that wasn't accounted for in the old modeling, that's going to be an artifact that you're not capturing in the model. So there are limitations, but being able to have the actual model built into Slate is what is allowing us to add these nudges. So like, okay, what if they went to another event? Or what if 25% of our students went to one more event? How does that affect our incoming class size? Or how does that affect our net tuition revenue for this year? Or how does this affect this particular student's likelihood to enroll? We're only able to do that because we have the actual model itself built into Slate with the raw behaviors. So if you are using, I'm not aware of another vendor who gives you the actual model itself. They usually just give you, here's the likelihood of they are to enroll, or we'll hop on a call and we'll hop in Excel and we can kind of chat. But I'm not aware of another vendor that actually gives you the model itself to plug into Slate. And that's where a lot of the strength that you can do with the nudges is with the model directly. And I think Jonathan has a question. Yeah, so I have a scheduled query that does the calculations and just writes it to a field. So the query itself is scheduled to run if we can do once a week, we can do like during the slow period, during the weekends, in the morning time, and that gets written to a field. And then just every week that would then be updated with like, oh, okay, they went to another event, that affects their percentage likely to enroll. And here is that new value. If you could do it more frequently, if you want, if you had like a huge population and you're doing application modeling, again, that's going to be limitations based on how big your model is, how intensive your calculations are, and how large your applicant pool, or how large your prospective pool is. But yeah, so the actual value 0 to 100% lives in a field, and you can, let's see, what was the other parts of the question? And yeah, so no, it does not, we do not calculate it every time in the report unless we're doing the nudges. I think I have everything written out in raw just for the workshop, but you do have that percentage that you can just use. But anything that would be the nudges, you would either, again, have to write a series of queries to schedule, or you'd have to just update the report itself.
Here's another question from Marielle. Why do this in Slate rather than a data warehouse?
So I would say some of the strengths of doing this in Slate is Slate does the calculations well. So you're building your modeling in Slate. So you're taking your live data. So one of the nice things is this is live in your Slate instance. So if you're doing it in a warehouse, so you're maybe moving the data to the warehouse nightly, and then you're running the calculations in the data warehouse, and then giving that percent possibility back into Slate. Again, we missed some of the strength on building the nudges and building expected cycle behaviors. So I think you're just missing a layer of functionality once you start moving the calculations out of Slate. Like I said, Slate does the calculations well. So I'm happy if you have, Muriel, some ideas on what the benefits of doing it in the data warehouse and then moving it back to Slate. And again, so the downstream Slate projects are also like the reports, but also the communications and some of the Voyager for travel recruitment planning, stuff like that. So I feel like there's a lot of strength in doing it in Slate, but there is not a wrong answer on how to do this. And Melissa, 2 months from now is kind of Predictive Modeling 101, where we'll get more into how this works. So please come back in a couple months.
Look at that. She set you up for
thanks, Melissa. I appreciate it.
That's good.
Jonathan, we're going to cover the actual Slate processes next month, but also 3 months ago, we did basically that same process for how to do it with engagement scoring. It's very similar. So definitely watch that webinar, and if you don't want to wait until next month, but a very similar process of scoring behaviors and then applying that format. I'm also happy to chat with you afterwards if you want to send me an email.
Yeah, and Jonathan, the recordings are all on our YouTube account for Beyond Academics. If you'll go there, you'll be able to go to the Beehive and see all of the historical ones that David has done. So, as well as our other Beehive conversations. So.
Yeah, so we can hop back over to our PowerPoint. And now we've kind of danced around the projection-driven actions. So we're looking more at the recruitment and marketing side with the kind of predictive modeling in these workshops, the binary logistic regression. You can calculate how that active live relationship between your behaviors and your outcome is. So you can compare, and we can hop back over to Excel. No point looking at a PowerPoint. So we can start looking at how, pop over here. We can start looking at how we can start nudging our prospective student pool into becoming more engaged with our campus or more likely to enroll. So, and this we'll go over this pretty quickly. So we have our raw data over here. And if we go over to these green columns, it ingests those behaviors, applies our modeling values, and gives us a probability. So this student's 68% likely to enroll, this student's 7% likely to enroll. So in this group of 38 students, we're projecting 17 are going to enroll. But we could also start seeing how do theoretical nudges affect both the student's probability to enroll, but our expected incoming class size. So in this example, we've just given one additional point to everyone in this 5-point score. I've programmed the Excel formula to not go over 5. So once they hit that limit, it's just going to be 5. And we can start seeing this student was 68% likely to enroll. Now they're 78% likely to enroll. And across our entire group, instead of 17 students projected to enroll, we get 20 students. That's a really blunt way to look at nudges. You're not going to get everyone in your prospective student pool to increase their behavior by 1, but we can also start weighting it. So maybe we want to look at what if we increased this 5-point behavior by 3 points for 70% of our population? Because realistically, you're just not going to get those broad spectrum nudges to your entire student population. So Excel is going to take a 70% chance of applying those points to each of these student records. And we're going to see how is that affecting our student probability to enroll. So again, this person went from 7% to, if they added 1 point, 11%. But if we added 3 points, 18%. But not everyone is getting those 3 points because everyone has a 70% chance of getting it. So we're going to again start looking at a historical data like, oh, we know 70% of our admitted class goes to admitted student day. So let's let's add that point to our pool at that weighted level. And we'll do this slightly different in our Slate report in a minute. But we're again just able to see how our strategic nudges are able to maybe increase our projected class size, or how maybe we have like academic programming that we want to see the effects of. And we can start planning to see how those upcoming events might affect our incoming class.
So David, really quick, when you can identify a percentage of an individual, and with Slate and other CRMs that are very powerful, could you then personalize that that nudge or that activity for that one person that has a 60%? Like, is that what you're really driving towards, as opposed to getting a list and then putting the list into some sort of process? What are you seeing the future of higher ed? Are we going to individualize and personalize, or do you still believe that we're going to manage a lot of our marketing, a lot of our nudging by cohorts?
Yeah, so we're going to look at in a little bit kind of an automated comm that is driven both whether or not a student gets the email, but also what that content is based on how likely they are to enroll. And if you want to, that engagement score piece as well. So I think the more that we can be proactive with our communications and really driving, it's something I like to call adaptive enrollment management. So it's not just strategic. It's not just, oh yeah, this email has been personalized or it's tailored. We're really being more proactive with what does the student need to see right now based on their student personas, their inferred data, their website traffic, their likelihood to enroll. All of these different data points are going to affect how a student engages with the institution. And I'm low likely to enroll, low engagement. I don't need a 500-word email. That's not what's going to get me excited. I'm high engagement, high likelihood to enroll. That's just the email that student's going to read is different from other students. So we can be much more strategic and adaptive when we're proactive with our Slate work or whatever CRM that we're working in. And this is just one of those data elements that helps us drive to that final product. So yeah, it's not everyone getting the same email. It's not everyone even getting the same content of the email. So just I would say some caution. Like, I have two good cautionary tales for this. I'll go with one just because of timing. So I would say a nudge needs to be in the context of your predictive model. So maybe your predictive modeling is looking at how long the student engages with your website. And maybe if they spend 30 minutes on your application requirements, they're 10% more likely to enroll. Well, you can't necessarily send someone to that application requirement page if they're already an admitted student and expect that same effect on your outcome. They've already applied. They don't need to know that they need to send you a transcript and test scores and whatever it might be. So you can't necessarily just like, oh, this is a behavior that affects enrollment. I can do that right now and expect that same impact on enrollment probability. But this does allow us to be more strategic with what we're able to do as nudges and how we can anticipate changes throughout the cycle of behavior to be more accurate in the future for our incoming class. So I think we can go ahead and pop back to our PowerPoint. So yeah, I think so much can really be driven through these projections on how you are engaging and interacting with your student. We covered a lot of different reports in Voyager in our engagement scoring workshop, so I won't spend a ton of time there. But if you watch last month's workshop on how to use engagement scoring in your business practices, a lot of the same stuff is very applicable to whether it's engagement scoring or predictive modeling, such as what school geographies, demographics, name buys to focus on that are outperforming projections and where you can leverage those at like similar institutions or geographies to be more impactful with your recruitment strategies. And we can also apply that more high touch recruitment places where it has that higher return on investment. So let's hop back to Slate. So let's see, where is my class building? So in this report, I just have built into the report itself our goals. So maybe we have for our in-state students, 188 records, 98 of them applied, 65 of them were admitted. We have a goal of 45 students, and that's just established by senior leadership at the institution. We're projecting that we're going to get 43 students to enroll based on our predictive model and about 2.1 million in net tuition revenue. If we are able to nudge them with maybe whatever it is, another event, a couple more open emails, more interactions with your counselor, we're actually anticipating 46 students with a net tuition of 2.3 million. And we're able to start building these more complex reports in Slate. One of the things I like to do is, you're somewhat limited with that traditional reporting structure in Slate. What I like to do is I've developed a data set that is just my report values. So things like, oh, in-state, international, low GPA. We are able to start loading in those goals as just a value on that data set. We can start doing independent subqueries to get our student counts, and we're just matching that person major or that person's group equals their row name. And we can also start adding in our projections, and we can also add in our nudge projections or anticipated projections based on cycle behaviors, and then just adding net tuition as a data point across those projections. So we're able to really be able to fine tune throughout the entire cycle against our goals. And it might even be a thing of, I'm gonna hop back over to Excel. It might even be a thing of, okay, how do we engage with these students automatically to more likely meet our goals? So we have our international students. We have, say, 860 of them. Our goal is about 260. That's a yield of 30%. Well, based on our projections, we are getting we have too many students based on our goals. And how do we get 9 less students in our incoming class? Maybe we just send them an automated, oh, these are the benefits of a gap year. So we're not losing students, but we are going to shift where their incoming class is. Or low GPA, specific for that group of students that is able to increase their confidence, increase their academic ability, and also show that the institution is dedicated to their college going experience and their journey as a student. So again, they're going to be more successful at the institution. They're more likely to attend the institution. So you might be more likely to hit your goal. And another really nice element of this is you can just start running experiments on your group. Not experiments. That sounds bad. You can start testing the effectiveness of some of your implementations or your outreach. So we need 20 additional in-state students. So we can have Excel just automatically generate a list of high likelihood to enroll students. Same thing, you can have Slate do this as well. But this just looks at high likelihood to enroll and it just lists their phone number, their ID. And we can start looking like, oh, okay, so we're going to take a group of 60. We're going to give half of them phone calls or programming, whatever it might be. Look at how many enroll versus the folks who did not receive an intervention. We got 9 additional enrolling students. So if we did that to all 60, we actually would have came pretty close to meeting our goal. And it's much easier just doing this kind of randomized control experiment rather than like, I'm going to develop a fuzzy matching or propensity score to build the effectiveness of our strategic outreach. That's just it's another layer of difficulty when you have something like this that is already such a utility player. It's giving you projections, it's giving you planning, it's letting you understand how nudges are going to affect, it's letting you test the effectiveness of your outreach. Let me see, I think
there's a question from Jason.
Yes.
David, could you show a high level of your report values data set?
Oh, like what values I have in it, or like the mapping for?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what his question is. Jason, if you can clarify it in the chat, or if you want, you can definitely join the stage, either one. So
yeah, welcome to pop up on stage and we can chat more about it. So yeah, I have a large, you can also do prompts if you want to. But I like just doing a data set because I have a very large data set that's like, class times and class days, general structure of the data set. Yeah, so I have the values are typically things like program major, time of day, like 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or it's the goals, or it's a sequence of classes. And then I can just add a filter to get to the specific set of values I want. In this case, it's just goals. And then I have like my goals are just used in a field on that data set. So this reporting export value 5 might be something different for days of the week, or it might be something else. But I'm able to have a data set that allows me to build these really fine-tuned reports that it's much easier to build a subquery export formula than it is to try to like, oh, I need a line for this raw value, then I can do a division on this in another row. So it's easier to specify what rows you want, and then just have dependent or independent subqueries doing the calculations for them. Really fun. During one of our recent office hours, we were able to use this methodology to give cumulative additions. So like the first row was 6 students. The second row was 5 students. So instead of the second row showing 5, it showed 11, because we're able to add a numeric value associated with each of these rows. So the formula itself is just give me the value of this value and plus anything less than that or anything greater than that to give you that cumulative summing throughout all of your rows. So it's a really fun way to build reports and gives you a lot more functionality than you would have otherwise. So we can pop back over here. So again, when we're starting to talk about recruitment and programming, we can start looking at how does our prospective pool look and what can we do to help support these students. So these are students that are high likelihood to enroll, over 80%. And we can start looking, okay, we have some low GPA folks, some STEM program folks, financial aid folks. And we start looking at our geographies. So in California, 23 geo market, we have a high school and we have a university with students. What is the cutoff, or what's this number need to be for us to hold a case study near these institutions? Or how can we deliver in-person programming for these institutions to get them from like high likelihood to enroll to like for sure to enroll? And if it's low academic, maybe we do again some kind of academic programming to support them. We have a biology faculty hop in to do a recruitment event, or call these students, or we film a nice video to send to these students that talks about work that we're doing in this area. Or if it's some kind of direct mailing or messaging about financial aid and how our institutional aid is competitive against some of our competitor schools. And again, we're just able to start seeing both that aggregate, and these are all test records, or how our individual students are showing up. And maybe we want to have Slate send those robot written postcards or a customized view book. So we're able to be much more strategic and adaptive to support these students in a way that we wouldn't be able to if we were going to do it for all of our students. So I think we can pop to, sorry. So our last topic is marketing communications, a lot of overlap with that recruitment piece. But we're able to start creating personas for our students, how we were kind of looking at how a student interacts with multiple models to start understanding where their student journey is. But we're also able to start crafting emails that send to students. So this particular email, just as an example, it sends to students who have either a high or low engagement score, as well as either a high or low, that's low, predictive modeling score. So if we look into it, so we're really trying to focus on different personas in this email so that we have a content block that delivers the email content that is more geared to those personas. So this first sentence here, we just like, oh, thanks for connecting with us. And then we just have a subquery export in the recipient list that looks at like, oh, if they emailed us yesterday, thanks for connecting with us yesterday. If they sent us an email, thanks for connecting with us last week. Application deadlines coming up. And then the actual content block will look at the student's values in this high-low, which is just a concatenate on their engagement score and their application score. And it's just determining those high and low cutoffs. And then content blocks. So we have 4 different content blocks. So if they are both high engagement and high likelihood to enroll, this is just a nice little touch. And this is just for our workshop here. So it's advertising and research with faculty. Again, this could be specified to faculty that you have research with. But it's just more so like, okay, this is just an email to get it on their mind again. Here's an opportunity to apply to our institution. They're more likely to already have done it. A student is really engaged, but has a low likelihood to enroll. We're sending them more tailored information based on their major to, again, just demonstrate like, oh, okay, you really like us. Here's some reasons that will actually have a long-lasting impact on your life for attending with us. And if they have a low engagement, but high likelihood to enroll, we're going to advertise in-person events. Again, it's a more intense call to action that they aren't really engaging with us yet. But because they are high likely to apply or enroll, they're more likely to take a high level call to action. But again, if they're a low engagement, low likelihood to enroll, they don't need a long 500-word email. Here's just an easy call to action. Come to a virtual event, a live virtual event, a video. We have a portal that is just like a day in the life of the student. So these are easier call to actions that they're more likely to participate in given their persona or their profile. And again, we're using the predictive modeling to both decide who gets the email, but also what content goes into the email. And I want to be mindful of time. So pop back to our PowerPoint. So today we worked through those planning and projections for the predictive modeling, how to use it in recruitment in your programming, but also your marketing and communications. There really are so many different ways to integrate predictive modeling into Slate and your practices, that especially when you're building the model directly into Slate. Like I said, when you have those raw behaviors, you can start applying nudges or expected changes in behavior. At every level, at every step, you have the behaviors, the person, the populations, the class level information. It's a very empowering method to have predictive modeling rather than just getting that final number from another system. From understanding your students better to orientating where you are in relation to your goals, to identifying what nudges are needed and where to apply them, and just how to adjust recruitment and marketing to meet goals in future and even just the current cycle. So we are quickly making our way through our 6-part series. This QR code will take you to a workshop waitlist to save your seats for future office hours there. You can also get a recording of previous workshops. Please do join us for our next live workshop. I'm going to say workshop a lot on this slide. I apologize. Next month, we get back into the really technical building of Slate. So we're going to get into all the fun configurable joins of how to apply your predictive modeling, how to ingest that scheduled query to make sure that's all happening automatically. And if time permitting, we can even get into more into the configurable joins that were in this workshop. And then for that in October, which is kind of, again, that predictive modeling 101, how to use binary logistic regression, feel free to invite folks from your institutional research or faculty who are trained in statistics. They're going to be a great resource in this kind of project. So happy to have them on the webinar, and we can have some more conversation in those webinars as well. Let me know what topics you want to cover in the future for 2025, maybe portals, configurable joins, communication topics like content blocks and translation codes. We have another project we're working on that is very exciting. Maybe we do that next year as well. Like I said, we do have office hours every month. We did some fun things about building a report this month. It was like a form response report that we were linking to multiple applications that they were submitting for different types of applications. Really fun. It's just really fun to just tinker with some problems in Slate and see what we can get. So anything, Slate, or if you want to talk more about these workshops or this particular project with engagement scoring and predictive modeling, or if you want a sneak peek for future workshops, we have time. We have a whole hour for each of those workshops to talk. And then, of course, always really excited for Beyond the Summit. It's a virtual Slate conference. It's free. It's hosted by Beyond Academics. It's very similar to the Slate stage that was being hosted during the pandemic. The QR code there can take you again to save a seat, or if you would like to submit a proposal to present, again, just use that QR code. Hey, Matt. Oh, I think you're muted, Matt.
Mute. Well, I'm glad you talked about the virtual summit. I think that is about the community coming together, sharing ideas, talking about the right topics. What is the topic that we should be thinking about? Even today, you were diving so much into real strategy that I think sometimes we just use the software based on what we always did in the past, right? And I think part of it is understanding the history of the data that you have and say, oh, let's try to do this much differently. We're going into generative AI and the LLMs and large language models, which right now we kind of have to go and find the data that tells us where we should look and what are the trends. As we move into generative AI, and maybe as part of the summit, we introduce some of that concepts of how does that become a part of the Slate ecosystem, and how to use it. So it'll be an interesting piece. So I welcome, folks to let us know what we should talk about. We're going to do the summit. We do it in a much different way than most people. It's really short, 30-minute sessions, and it goes really fast. So we're excited about building that out and having David and others, experts like yourselves, join the conversation. And you don't have to necessarily be an expert on anything. It could even be a topic that really resonates with you, where the Slate community needs to know. And that would be something we would really be encouraging people to do. So thank you, David. I just wanted to, fill that in a little bit. So.
Yeah, and just to kind of follow up with the generative AI, one of the things I kind of skipped just for time, but I think we have some time now, is it's really exciting to see how predictive modeling evolves with that. I think between the machine learning algorithms, that just becomes easier to do several different types of modeling all on top of each other, and persona-directed generative AI recommendations. So your VP just gets a push notification from their school-specific LLM that is, hey, we see that you're not meeting your goals in these 3 categories. You need to increase, whether it's name buys, recruitment events in Northern California, targeting schools with high academic interests, moderate financial aid need. The director then gets a more specific, like, oh, okay, it's these 13 different actions that need to be taken. And then your analyst gets like, okay, log into this vendor, buy these 17 predefined SAT equals this, score GPA equals this. So again, we're able to really start understanding at each level.
Yeah, I think, for the folks that are in the audience, we're very reactive. Even the way we're managing how we recruit students, how we engage, we're very reactive to like data, right? With the whole generative AI, the LLM, and if you follow us, you'll start to see us. We're going to become very proactive, and proactive is going to allow leaders to ask questions about the data to say, hey, who should I be interacting with today, on this? And I think that's going to be a different mindset in the way that we approach data and strategy is going to be a big part of it. I also think that we need to come together to realize, where does all this data come from that we have to analyze? It isn't just from the CRM that, there's so many different interactions. You just talked about, the clearinghouse and others that'll come into play, right? The common apps, all those data elements are going to come into play, and we're going to be able to manage it in an LLM because it comes into a container. So I think it's going to be a pretty interesting time as we move forward. So I'm excited about having that conversation a little bit. It is still early, but maybe we can even show you some of the things that we're seeing, because right now we configure systems to do algorithms that we needed to do. In the future, we will tell them the rules, and the actual system will build the rules and the algorithm in the back end. That's going to be a different way of how we manage systems as we go forward. So
yeah, it's like you said, it's a fundamental shift of how we are being proactive rather than reactive to the data.
Yeah.
So I think that's really exciting kind of avenue to pursue.
Yeah. Well, we're at time almost, and David, thank you for giving us this insight as always. You have a following. The group keeps growing, so it's been really good to see the number of schools in the audience, and I appreciate all of you all just jumping in and interacting and bringing the conversation to life. So thank you so much. Thank you, David.
Thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure.